Welcome to Everything Right, Wrong, and Almost Right in the movie version of Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. In this video series, I will analyze what went right and what went wrong in all 8 of the Harry Potter films. There are going to be spoilers in every one of these videos, so if you're ready for that, let's get started. First, we'll identify the central themes and plot points of Half-Blood Prince the book, and then move scene by scene, analyzing how the film captured each of these elements. When adapting books to film, there are always details that need to be altered or omitted due to time constraints or artistic interpretation. What I'm interested in is how these films captured the general feel of these moments. At the end of each analysis, I'll let you know if the scene got it right, wrong, or almost right, and I'll give an accuracy rating of 1 out of 10. The foremost theme in the book is Harry's transition from adolescence to adulthood, which is the same place many of us were in when we first read Half-Blood Prince. In Book 6, we watch Harry become a man. He falls in real love for the first time, he starts working towards his dream of becoming an Auror after Hogwarts, and at the very start, Dumbledore asks Harry for his help with a mission. This is the first time Dumbledore has ever asked Harry for his help with anything, and throughout the school year, he will give Harry more and more responsibility, until by the end, Harry is the one to stand by Dumbledore's side in death. And when Dumbledore is laid to rest, the last and greatest of his protectors, Harry faces the long road ahead as an adult. The second largest element of Book 6 is Voldemort's backstory. We learn about Voldemort's grandfather, his uncle, both his parents, and his childhood. We also learn about his intent to make 6 Horcruxes, and we identify 5 of them. Through regular private lessons, Dumbledore gives Harry all the tools he can to help him defeat Voldemort. Third is the encroaching danger of Voldemort to the wizard and Muggle worlds. Nowhere and no one is safe. People are beginning to disappear, Hannah Abbott's mother gets murdered, and Harry is given even greater protection by the Ministry and the Order. He's personally escorted from Privet Drive by Dumbledore, accompanied by Hagrid in Diagon Alley, and watched by Tonks on the Hogwarts Express. Other essential plot points are the love triangle between Ron, Hermione, and Lavender Brown, the question of Snape's trustworthiness, and we have Draco's descent into madness as he struggles to assassinate Dumbledore, fix Hogwarts' vanishing cabinet, and save the lives of himself and his parents, all while trying to finish school, play Quidditch, and grow up as well. This was not a good year for Draco Malfoy. We also need to establish Fred and George's joke shop, which will provide some defense against the dark arts goods Harry will use in Deathly Hallows, and we need a through line of Harry's obsessive desire to figure out what Draco is up to, and Harry's struggles to get Professor Slughorn to give up the real memory of that fateful conversation with teenage Voldemort. It's not an easy task, but if you put all this together in 3 hours or less, you got yourself a pretty good adaptation of Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. Let's see how well they did. Scene 1. Death Eaters cause chaos. At the very start of the film is this chaotic and vicious action scene. Death Eaters are flitting about like mad, terrorizing both the Muggle and Wizarding worlds, and this replaces the scene at the start of the book in which the British Prime Minister and Ministers for Magic meet to discuss the return of Lord Voldemort. Now, that is a scene I would have loved to see in the film because, for one, Fudge admits he's been fired, and that is oh so satisfying after everything he put us through in Order of the Phoenix. And second, the scene offers an ingenious blurring of the Muggle and magical worlds, and this has always been one of Rowling's most compelling world-building devices. Idea that wizard and Muggle world leaders collaborate, or that the visitor's entrance to the Ministry of Magic is in a busted old telephone booth, or that any piece of trash you see on the street might just be a portkey, are some of the ideas that make the wizarding world feel and come alive. But I completely get why this action scene felt like the better option. Instead of talking about the chaos, they took an opportunity to show it. However, in the book, 12 cars fell into the river when the Death Eaters destroyed that bridge. In the movie, if you look closely, everybody makes it to safety, including this elderly couple running across. If nobody gets hurt, it actually minimizes the threat that Voldemort poses to the Muggles and feels like just a cool special effect. Admittedly, it's a split-second scene, and maybe it would have cost way too much money to have vehicles or people falling into the water, so I'll give them the benefit of the doubt here. But contrastingly, Ollivander's abduction from Diagon Alley in this scene is very impactful. It's startling and violent, and the idea that real damage is being done to this community is clearly communicated. Last thing I want to touch on this scene, the Death Eaters. I have never understood the decision to have plumes of black smoke erupt from the Death Eaters every time they apparate. Apparition is super inconsistent from film to film, and it just feels like what looks cool in the moment is prized over what makes sense long term. Critiques aside, this scene got it right. Accuracy, 8 out of 10, but points off for the black smoke and no muggles dying. Scene 2, Dumbledore collects Harry. In the book, there is that very memorable scene in which Dumbledore meets Harry at Privet Drive and sits down for a talk with him and the Dursleys. Through this conversation, we realize the depth of the protection Petunia bestowed upon Harry. When she took him in, Dumbledore was able to invoke an ancient magic, which ensured that as long as Harry considered her house home, Voldemort could not touch him there. As a little girl, Petunia wanted desperately to be a part of the magical world, and though rejection and jealousy caused her to despise everything about that secret society of witches and wizards, in guarding Harry for so many years, albeit grudgingly, she ended up playing an immensely important part in it. In that scene, we also learn that Sirius, Harry's godfather, who died defending Harry only weeks ago, has left him everything he owned in his will. This includes a sizable amount of gold and a house which will be his refuge in Deathly Hallows. So just like his parents, even death could not stop Sirius from taking care of Harry. Finally, there's Kreacher, Sirius's house elf, who can hardly bear to have been transferred into Harry's ownership along with the house. His despair forces us to confront the enslavement of house elves and leads us back to the theme of social justice, which is so present in these books. This scene reinforces how much Harry's life has meant to and affected the lives of the adults surrounding him. But more than anything, it's an element of closure, bringing us full circle. On Dumbledore's first visit to Privet Drive, Harry is a year old. On his second, and sadly, his last, Harry is a year away from being an adult. All of this was left out of the film. Instead, our first shot of Harry is at this Muggle cafe, where he is reading the Daily Prophet, shame on you, Harry, but it tells us that Malfoy Sr. has landed himself in big trouble, and Harry flirts with a pretty waitress, which shows us that Harry is growing up, and he's also a little bit of a stud muffin, and it tells us that Harry can appreciate some black girl magic, and I, for one, am not mad about that. Harry then spies Dumbledore under this billboard, which reads, "Tonight, make a little magic with your man," and this obviously serves to juxtapose the wizard and Muggle worlds. I get everything they're trying to do here, but overall, this scene just feels a little too wink, nudge to be truly entertaining. It's also awkward AF. Harry sniffs his own breath, which only makes me wonder what it smells like, and that is not a question I want answered. Notably different from the book is that movie Dumbledore does not tell Harry he's coming to get him in advance, nor does he ask Harry to come with him to Slughorn's. He takes a do-as-I-say approach and is actually quite rude to Harry. Having Dumbledore treat him like a child is completely antithetical to the whole Harry is almost a grown man narrative, but by all means, go off, movie Dumbledore. Ultimately, I agree with the decision to alter this scene for the film. However, the feel of Dumbledore and Harry's relationship here is completely opposite to what we experience in the book, so they got it all wrong. Accuracy, 2 out of 10, and that's being generous. Scene 3, recruiting Horace Slughorn. After Harry meets Dumbledore at the billboard, they set off to track down Professor Slughorn. Can we talk for a second about how truly terrifying Apparition looks in this movie? This is like one of the scariest things I've ever seen in my life, so hats completely off to the production team there. Anyway, this scene was already pretty cinematic in the book. We have Dumbledore and Harry's arrival at this absolutely wrecked house, Slughorn's transfiguration from armchair to man, and then the restoration of the house to its pristine original state by magic. So really cool special effects and intricate set designs are already a given here, and those are the elements this movie really seemed to sink its teeth into. And no surprise, this was all translated beautifully to the screen. Now, the purpose of this scene is threefold. First, it establishes that Harry has the power to change Slughorn's mind. The fact that Dumbledore gives Harry responsibility in recruiting Slughorn, in getting his memory, and helping to destroy the Horcrux locket are all symbols of Harry's transition to manhood. Second, this scene draws our attention to Sirius's brother, Regulus, who will come to make a grand re-entrance as the mysterious R.A.B. This is also the film's only reference to Sirius. Now you tell me if you think this was enough.
You no doubt know his older brother Sirius died a few weeks ago.
Third, this scene draws us back to the problem of blood-based discrimination within the wizarding community. Slughorn makes a comment about Harry's mother, who by birth ranks at the bottom of the wizarding social order, which is somewhere above centaurs, house elves, and goblins.
She's exceedingly bright, your mother. Even more impressive when one considers she was Muggle-born.
One of my best friends is Muggle-born. She's the best in our year.
Oh, please don't think I'm prejudiced. No. Your mother was one of my absolute favourites. Look, there she is, right at the front.
In the book, Slughorn is a little bit more brazenly wizard racist, and Harry is a bit more confrontational. However, levels are important when balancing a relationship across the span of a film, and Harry gets pretty down and dirty with Slughorn later on, so I'm letting it slide. Overall, though, Harry feels ornamental in this scene, and that's arguably what they were going for. He barely speaks, and instead of being motivated by anything Harry says, Slughorn's motivation to return is that he's just so mesmerized by Harry's celebrity status that he can't resist the opportunity to teach him. But in the book, when Slughorn starts bragging about all the famous people he's helped and all the fancy presents he gets, Harry asks him this simple question. All these people know where to find you to send you stuff, asked Harry. That's not a good Harry, but that's what I got. That's what you got. Anyway, the smile slid from Slughorn's face as quickly as the blood from his walls. Of course not. I have been out of touch with everybody for a year. Harry questions him some more and essentially gets him thinking about how much more comfortable and safer he would be at Hogwarts. And this is what convinces him to come back. Harry politely cuts straight through all of Slughorn's BS. And this is who Harry is at his core. He is unfailingly polite, but he's also observant, shrewd, and inquisitive. And he has been that way since day one, asking Hagrid all them questions about the Philosopher's Stone.
I shouldn't have told you that. Where are you going?
Overall, this scene got it right. Accuracy, 8 out of 10. And I'm awarding a bonus point for Slughorn's line at the end of the scene.
All right, I'll do it. But I want Professor Merrythorpe's old office, not the water closet I had before. And I expect a raise. These are mad times we live in, mad.
They are indeed.
It's so funny, and it inspires curiosity about the wizarding world. What does Professor Merrythorpe's office look like, and how much do Hogwarts teachers get paid? It invites us into the wizarding world and brings it to life, and these are exactly the moments I'm looking for. On a final note, I really appreciate that social justice is one of the most palpable struggles in the wizarding world, and just like the real world, it doesn't go away at the end of this story. There is still work to do even after Harry's defeat of Lord Voldemort. And what this scene acknowledges is that people like teachers, well-connected, popular, friendly people, can be as equally implicit in the problem as outright bigots like Death Eaters. Now, this is a sad irony given all of J.K. Rowling's recent comments about trans women, and I want to make it clear right now that I do not condone or support her attitudes on this at all. Scene 4. Dumbledore transports Harry to the Burrow. Now, this is a scene the film got horribly wrong. But to be fair, it's less of a bad scene and more of a non-scene, because after Harry and Dumbledore leave Slughorn, Dumbledore just apparates Harry into the middle of this field by himself. And he doesn't even tell the Weasleys that Harry is coming. While this allots for a very silly moment where Weasleys plus Hermione pop over the banisters trying to figure out if Harry's there, a really key plot point is missed to make room for it. And it is that at no point in the 16 and a half years that Dumbledore guarded the life of one Harry James Potter did he ever, for a second, leave him unprotected. But there is not one reference at any point in this film to the issue of Harry Potter's security. And Harry's security matters because, cue Professor Trelawney,
you are in grave danger.
Yeah. The Burrow is supposed to have been given top-rate magical protection, quote, the highest security the Ministry of Magic can provide. But in this movie, Death Eaters are free to turn up on Christmas and set the house on fire. That Harry's security is never touched on minimizes the encroaching danger of Voldemort, one of the central themes, and it negates the idea that Harry is loved and cherished, especially by Dumbledore. I have a lot of thoughts about Michael Gammon's performance as Dumbledore. He is overall aloof, dismissive, and just even downright rude to Harry. And this might have been able to come off as somehow endearing or comical, but when you take into account that the movies never detail any of the lengths Dumbledore went to keep Harry safe, he just comes off as careless, even indifferent, and that doesn't do the story any favors. What should have happened here is that Dumbledore delivers Harry right into the Weasleys' front yard. He takes him aside, explains that he would like to engage him in private lessons that year, and implores him to be careful. This would have taken about 30 movie seconds, so excluding it here is completely unforgivable. Instead, their lessons are reduced to random meetings throughout the film, and this definitely weakens the narrative, but I'll talk more about why that is later on. But had they kept this all too essential interlude with Dumbledore, they still could have kept that adorable banister moment with just Ron, Hermione, and Ginny wondering if Harry had arrived yet, while Mrs. Weasley force feeds him in the kitchen, which is essentially what happens in the book. In the film, as Harry walks up to the Burrow, we do get this lovely glimpse of Ginny, maiden fair, secluded in her tower, but they could have kept this in too, even if Harry had arrived with Dumbledore. The film makes some valiant efforts to build up a romance between Harry and Ginny, but largely this is unsuccessful, and I'll talk more about that a bit later on as well. I already shot the gun on this. They got it wrong. Accuracy 0 out of 10. There is no universe in which the Weasleys get no protection or warning when it comes to harboring Harry Potter. It is beautifully shot overall and funny because Harry lands in a pond, but it's still weird just how far Dumbledore drops Harry from the house. Like, what are you trying to prove, sassy movie Dumbledore? Now, scene 5. The trio is reunited. The next sequence involves Harry, Ron, and Hermione inside the Burrow talking over how dangerous the wizarding world has become. This is a really sweet scene. It's cozy and warm, it's intimate, they're joking, using magic, they set Malfoy's picture on fire. It's all the things we're looking for in a trio bonding moment. Effortlessly, they got it right. Accuracy, 10 out of 10. Now, you might be thinking, I'm going to be super harsh for this whole review, but there are going to be a lot of 10, so stick around if you want to celebrate all the things this movie got right as well. And if you like what you heard, please give this video a like, give it a share, and click that subscribe button so you can be notified of my next post, everything right, wrong, and almost right in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1. Scene 6. Narcissa and Bellatrix visit Snape. So in this scene, Narcissa asks Snape to watch over and protect her son, Draco Malfoy. Also, Bellatrix interrogates Snape about his loyalty, and in the end, Snape proves himself by making an unbreakable vow. This scene was exceptionally well executed, and not just because it includes two of the franchise's best actors, Alan Rickman and Helena Bonham Carter. The shots of the sisters' approach to Snape's house, and when they arrive, of Wormtail lurking in the door, are just superb. Director David Yates really shines when it comes to capturing the sinister, the mysterious. The one thing that's missing in this scene is a sense of Narcissa's absolute desperation to save the life of her son. This is very important to establish because it's what causes her to lie to Lord Voldemort in Deathly Hallows Part 2 when she tells him Harry is dead, thus saving Harry's life and enabling him to kill Lord Voldemort. In the book, she spends this scene just racked with sobs. She is crying and shaking so hard she can barely speak, poor woman. A tear glistens in the eye of Narcissa in the movie, but ultimately it's the idea that her pride and her strength succeed at keeping her deep emotions at bay. Now, the general rule for actors is that it is far more interesting to watch someone struggle, not to cry, and this is also our first introduction to Narcissa on screen. Having her wailing and sobbing the very first time we see her could arguably present a weak female character, and there are none of those in Harry Potter. In fact, I'm doing a video about this later. Nevertheless, she could have squeezed in a bit more desperation in this performance. She does not beg Snape, she simply asks him, and that is hardly as interesting. If there had been a moment where she just slumps down in her chair, or if she had staggered forward here, she reaches out to Severus, pleading, something to indicate that this is a woman, strong though she may be, who is at the absolute end of her rope. There is a Shakespearean level of emotion displayed by each and every character at some point in the books. This is what makes them feel like real people. But in this movie, deep feelings are rarely revealed and are often not discernible at all. That being said, this scene got it right. I especially love the unbreakable vow effect, and it is really cool that it leaves a visible mark on their skin. I'm so interested to know how they achieved that. As far as accuracy, it never reaches that critical level of emotional intensity, so it receives an 8 out of 10. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and check out part 2.